Welcome back to the league that means nothing on Go Again Gaming.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to The League That Means Nothing, Season 4, Round 4. My name is Bryce Platts, and as is tradition, I have brought on a casting friend from the greater world of Flesh and Blood. This time, it is one of the co-hosts of the greatest Flesh and Blood podcast around, Arsenal Pass, which means that coin flip, it could be Pankaj Bhajwani. Pankaj, is that you?
Oh, stop it, Bryce. But if you're going to glaze my podcast, I'm going to do you one as well and glaze your podcast, which I have really, really enjoyed. I just listened to the one you did with Max Ferocity. I actually did that on the way back from Calling Kansas. And of course, before that already, I really enjoyed your episodes with Yuki, Josh Scott, and Mitch as well, which was on your YouTube channel, but I don't think it made it to your Spotify, but I watched it when it was on your YouTube. Big fan of the way you do your podcast. I think you bring a whole other depth to these interviews, which I don't think we commonly see, especially with your focus on knowing who the person is outside of Flesh and Blood, outside of their sort of bit more public-facing personas, and I've really, really appreciated that aspect of your episodes.
Thanks so much, Pankaj. You have been one of the earliest and most fervent supporters, and you keep it going. I really appreciate it, which makes me even more excited to be sitting next to you in the ones and zeros of virtual space for this next match. It is round 4, folks. Granted, there is nothing on the line. Nevertheless, these players are going to be fighting tooth and nail for the victory, despite the fact that they can't win anything. That's right. Everything doesn't matter. This is a 100% nihilistic approach to Flesh and Blood competition, which is very different than what we normally see. This match is going to be Gravy Bones Shipwrecked Looter versus Arachne Marionette. Pankaj, any insight?
So I've spoken to a few Arachne Marionette players on how they like to approach this matchup. And it's funny because both of them told me very different things. So I first spoke to Tao Tao because I was considering playing Arachne Marionette, and he's the one I have most easy access to. And he said he approaches the Gravy matchup with the dagger-focused package and the idea to just kill them as soon as possible. And then I spoke to Dan Rutkowski, and he actually believes that you want to go away from the Dagger Focus package into Gravy Bones, particularly because the Dagger Focus package is not good at clearing chum. The dagger pumps typically bring a dagger up to 4 or 5, either from scar tissue or a tarantular toxin, or a +4 from, say, a saber bloodshed or cut from the same cloth. But that's not good enough for you to clear chum effectively, so Dan Rutkowski prefers the more stealth version into Gravy Bones. So it was very interesting hearing both these players' takes on the Gravy Bones matchup. That being said, I don't have too much personal experience myself, so I myself am actually hoping to learn something as well from the way I believe it's Shamir piloting the Arachne Marionette over here to see how he approaches this matchup.
Two stellar players with completely different approaches to the same matchup. This is exactly what makes Flesh and Blood such a rich game. Pankaj, is there anything that the Gravy Bones player is going to be trying to do, or is it just full steam ahead, all gold, blood, and zombies in his case?
Yes, the Gravy wants to do gravy things. That is to say, they don't really need to adjust their game plan too much for this matchup. Maybe you bring in one Whaler Humperdinck, because after all, you are against an assassin, and they do have enough random banishes off the top where there are certain draw sequences, certain unlucky banishes, which maybe puts you in a bit of a fatigue end state. So having the get out of jail free card in the form of Whaler Humperdinck is maybe something you could opt to do. But other than that, you are really the one asking the questions over here, putting these allies with awkward health numbers on the field and asking your assassin opponent, does your hand deal with this efficiently right now or not? For example, I put a Sawbones on the field, and you don't really have a clean way to deal with that. Suddenly that Sawbones, instead of having 2 health, or effectively 3, has like 5 or 6, and then you're just simply outvaluing the assassin.
Okay, well, I'm chomping at the bit to get started, but before we do, we have a quick message from our League That Means Nothing sponsors. Go ahead and roll the video, Az.
This episode, League That Means Nothing, is brought to you by Invasion Comic Books, a comics and collectibles shop out of Canada, specialising in current and older books, but also stocking Warhammer, D&D, Funko Pops, Magic, Flesh and Blood, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh cards, but also some retro games as well across Sega, Nintendo, and PlayStation. Now, for viewers of the League That Means Nothing, you got some cracking discount codes here. We got TLTMN10 for 10% off all of your Flesh and Blood singles, and we've got TLTMN Crew 10 for 10% off Sealed Crucible of War. So that's TLTMN 10 for 10% off Fab singles, and TLTMN Crew for 10% off Sealed Crucible of War. Make sure you go and check them out. Invasion Comic Books, out of Canada.
Thank you so much to all of our sponsors. You keep the lights on and keep more games of Flesh and Blood with absolutely no stakes hitting the internet airwaves. Ponkish, are you ready to proceed on down to the match floor?
I am so ready. And you say no stakes, but hey, clout and bragging rights are stakes in my eyes, Bryce.
Without a doubt. And our players, Justin Hainel on the left side of your screen, piloting Gravy Bones, versus Shamir Sami, are going to be competing for those bragging rights. However, Justin takes an early lead given that Matt, his combat chain is the gravy train, his graveyard is the bone zone, and dare I say it, is that aggro blaze in the form of a guinea pig on there?
I'm not sure, but that's just my headcanon right now. That is Aggro Blaze. It has to be Zach as a gerbil, a hamster. I'm not entirely sure what that is. But shifting focus into that side of the playmat, I do want to point out Justin Hainel has chosen to bring in Crown of Dominion for this matchup, as opposed to something like Crown of Providence that we've seen recent gravy lists choose to prefer into an assassin like Slip to the Cracks, at least. But Justin Hainel saying, I want to bring the Dominion in. I want to be a little bit more insulated from perhaps not finding a golden tipple in my first few hands, which is one of the fail cases that Gravy Bones has. Also similarly reflected in his aggressive playstyle is his choice of leg equipment with the Mage Master boots instead of something like a quick dodge flexes.
A decomposing dude established on Justin Hainel's first turn of the game. Rigor Mortis hits the bone zone, and Shamir Sami has the first affirmative attack here. It's Kiss of Death, a really nasty card if our last game against Verdance is to be referenced.
Speaking of wanting to kill your gravy opponent as soon as possible, Kiss of Death, a very, very strong way to do it. Very difficult to want to block this card, but also if you can give it go again, which Shamir has managed to do right now, it means he can use his flick knives to flick the Kiss of Death and guarantee an extra 2 more damage. And that is one of the ways that Arachne Marionette and Arachne Slip to the Cracks can just suddenly output way more damage than you're expecting, is that the repeated Kiss of Deaths are always +2 damage if you can give it go again and flick them on a later chain link.
Gravy Bones attempts to transform blood into gold, whereas Arachne just wants to transform blood into more blood. And it keeps spilling as a Hunter's Clave pushes up to the combat chain after that Kiss of Death connects for 3, essentially 4, after the loss of life.
Also have to point out that Shamir chose to pay for the stains of the redback by pitching a blue instead of activating flick knives and then having the stains be free because the opponent will be marked, which shows, I think, quite a bit of discipline from his side. We saw what can sometimes happen for Arachne Marionette in the previous game, where you maybe lose your Hunter's Claves way too early, and then you don't have a way to mark your opponent anymore, don't have easy sources of go again anymore. So Shamir keeping both his Claves around, but also wanted to flick the Kiss of Death as well, so didn't want to waste a flick on the Hunter's Clave.
And furthermore, Justin thanking his lucky stars that he's not facing down the card that Shamir decided to pitch. That's Bonds of Agony, the first that he's been able to find thus far this game. 40 plays 33, and luckily enough, Justin has dodged a fearsome amount of disruption early.
Which is perhaps telling. Maybe Shamir has something even more powerful to put in his arsenal, or that was just his blue for the turn that he wanted to fuel his following turn for. Sorry, his current turn for. Now it looks like Justin will be ending this turn marked, so Shamir should be transforming into a random agent of chaos, but also will have access to Mask of Deceit, should he choose to use it on the opponent's turn, to turn into whichever agent he wants to. And that could be a very aggressive stance that Shamir could take. If he draws a correct hand for it, use your Mask of Deceit as soon as possible and just don't let the Gravy Bones have any sort of footing in this game and just try and kill them before they can establish that graveyard and establish those allies, which are very difficult for you to deal with.
Shamir took a long time tanking on whether or not to deploy the last card in hand, and it was a pain in the backside. Definitely not more fearsome than Bonds of Agony, but a fantastic starter, especially later on in the game when Marionette is sometimes want to leave themselves, dagger bereft, or perhaps with the incorrect loadout, like 2 Graphene Calistras or something like that. In this case, Shamir just trying to kill Justin until he's dead. 3 go again right here, offering a little bit more pain if it connects.
This is a very aggressive stance from Shamir's side, because typically you want to save your natural go-again cards, like pain in the backside, to clear pesky allies. So for example, this card is one of the best answers you have for something like a Sawbones or something like a Swabby from Justin Hainel's side. So him deploying it over here, I think, is perhaps signaling that he's perhaps a little bit concerned about a Conqueror of the High Seas coming his way from Justin Hainel's side. That would be one of the main reasons why you'd want to just deploy the card right now instead of saving it to clear an ally on the following turn.
Transformation comes through for Shamir. The first roll is off the table, so it doesn't count. Looks like the second one comes off of the webcam as well, but it's a 1. One of the best that you can possibly roll. That is Black Widow, which means that Shamir will be offering some disruption of Justin's hand on the next turn.
Oh yeah, of course. The die rolled off the webcam conveniently and was the perfect number. I'm just kidding. Shamir, very, very stand-up player, would not do something like this. Did turn into Black Widow, which means he doesn't even need to use the Mask of Deceit to turn into Black Widow, because that's typically the choice you would go for if you decide to deploy that headpiece. So already is going to be the Black Widow.
For Justin, it's a pretty clean turn of play out a Loot the Hold, pitch Anka in order to establish Rigor Mortis and swing Rigor Mortis. No activation of the gold-baited hook here because no gold was generated earlier on in the turn. This is a very tame Gravy Bones turn, if I do say so myself. So Shamir has full steam ahead to make heads-up blocks and also send heads-up damage. That being said, Loot the Hold is going to do some disruptive heavy lifting. One of the things I do want to mention here, Pankaj, is that Justin on the previous turn, when Shamir sent pain in the backside, was able to block with a Sunken Treasure and thereby turn over the only stealth card that Shamir has in his graveyard thus far. May not be too much of an issue, but when a deck that likes to play a lot of Codex of Frailties and also Codex of Frailty at attack reaction speed, I'm looking at you, take up the mantle, that could really make some issues for Shamir down the line unless he's able to get one in the bin.
I really like how you said that's a tame Gravy Bones' turn, and it was 2 cards, send 6 with disruption, and leave a 1 health ally on the back, which really just goes to show how strong this hero really is. But the fact that there was disruption was actually a very, very big deal for Justin Hainel because the opponent is Black Widow. So when you force cards out of Shamir's hand over there, he actually wasn't able to use the Black Widow ability at all because he was forced to block with his cards because Loot the Hold is a disruptive effect. So it's very, well, to your point, yes, it's a bit of a middling Gravy Bones turn as far as Gravy Bones turns goes. It was very, very good timing for Justin Hainel to try and, which basically stuffed the Black Widow from Shamir.
Justin now with 4 cards in hand and 1 in the arsenal and full steam ahead against his opponent. 33 plays 40. There's a 7 life deficit on the Gravy side of the board, but that can close in an instant. But the necessary piece in order to make that massive turn, gold doubloons, is not present whatsoever at the moment.
That being said, Justin Hainel is going to try and fix that over here by deploying this Portside Exchange, discarding that Whaler Humpening, which we spoke about at the beginning, a very, very good anti-fatigue tool. Should this matchup end up going that way, which sometimes it doesn't, but it is nice to just have that safety valve over there. However, not something you want to see this early in the game, because if you deploy this right now, your opponent can just take how much damage they need to take and then just clear that off the board, and you no longer have the safety valve. So he really wants to try and find some other allies to try and deploy right now.
Here comes the safety valve. Chum, friendly first mate, the first copy thus far, also hits the graveyard, gives Whaler Humperdinck a little bit of company. And that is the card that makes it so difficult for Arachne Marionette to find headway in the board state race. Just can't remove that ally very conveniently, and this is something that's going to make it even harder. Conqueror of the High Seas Treasure Pack Edition, mind you, coming in for, I think it's only 7, though.
Are those 2 allies in the pitch, or is that just 1 ally and it's one ally and a blue?
Yeah.
So remember a few turns ago when Shamir decided to send the pain in the backside instead of save it to potentially clear an ally? And we were guessing that perhaps he was afraid of a Conqueror of the High Seas. And it looks like that's exactly what Justin Haenel had in his arsenal. So very, very heads-up read by Shamir on that turn cycle to not end with an arsenal and save himself from getting disrupted by that card. However, he ended up getting disrupted by Loot the Hold anyway, but it was still a fantastic read by him.
And diligent use of the block on Black Tech Whispers. You only get 1 block value every single game, and Conqueror of the High Seas coming in for 7 is the exact time to cash it in. Furthermore, Shamir had a bit of an awkward hand. It was 2 blues that were blocked with on Conqueror of the High Seas. I generally think that Marionette builds don't want to have more than 1 blue in hand at any given time. Otherwise, they're just going to be converted for their block value. Hurl is the follow-up for Shamir Sami. 3 go again.
And the Conqueror was also threatening 2 gold because it's on hit, destroy arsenal, make a gold if you do, and the gold baited hook was also activated prior to it. So very, very effective use of the Black Tech Whisperers there from Shamir's side. And this Hurl over here, not a very common inclusion in a Arachne Marionette list, which perhaps shows why Shamir was okay to use a pain in the backside earlier on, because he has many more of these head jab-like effects in his deck.
Compass of the Sunken Depths used on the Gravy Bones side of the board. Justin Haenel parts the miss and sees forth into the high seas, charts his course based on what is in the hand and also on top of the deck. What he doesn't know, though, are the 2 cards that still lurk in the hand of Shamir Sami. More pain to come after this Hurl resolves. Looks like 3 damage is going to come through the blocks. Not that there were any to be offered. 40 plays 30. Shamir has a healthy life lead as he slams a Leave No Witnesses onto the combat chain.
And the Hurl also removed the mark from Justin Haenel's side. But of course, Flick Knives still available for Shamir Sami. And you have to wonder whether he's going to use it over here to leave Justin Haenel marked. And also, very importantly, leave a dagger slot open for himself should he want to try and get into the state which Arachne Marionettes really want to get into, which is you have 1 Hunter's Clave and 1 Calycera.
Blood in the Water comes out of the arsenal for Justin Haenel, being the exact trump card against Leave No Witnesses on Shamir's side of the board. Exactly what you want to be doing. It feels so good to deploy a 0 for 4 defense reactions from arsenal on a Leave No Witness.
And it looks like Shamir is opting to go ahead and use the Flick Knives over here. Leave No Witnesses has been blocked out, which means nothing will be removing the mark on this turn. Opponent will end the turn marked. You're going to flip into an Agent of Chaos. Your Mask of Deceit will be online. And you also have Tunic up. So if you are able to create a Calycera token, you can just use the Tunic to pay for the Calycera.
A 5 is rolled. Arachne Redback is going to be the transformation here, which means, Arachne Tarantula. Which is not going to give access to Go Again, but it will give access to extra life loss, especially conferring Kiss of Deaths on hit to every single dagger hit for the remainder of the turn. Do you think Shamir is happy about that transformation on this turn?
I think if he arsenaled a Calycera generator, or he has found a Calycera generator in this hand over here, he'd be quite happy with this. Tarantula is one of those Agents of Chaos. Sure, it's not disruptive like Black Widow, but if the Arachne game plan is to kill your opponent as fast as possible, this is one of the agents that lets you do that.
Justin starting it off with a yellow golden tipple, discarding a yellow golden tipple. So creating a gold token, drawing a card, and also threatening the on-hit of a gold token thanks to the activation of Gold Baited Hook, which is risk-free thanks to the fact that you're just resolving a golden tipple.
Not discarding an ally over there is a bit of good news for Shamir Sami's side. Justin definitely wants to be discarding allies to the Golden Tipple, not real cards. But nevertheless, still creating the gold, keeping the engine going, giving you free activations of Hook is still very, very strong, and one of the ways Gravy is able to simply outvalue many decks in this game.
Begs the question, what is still in the hand of Justin Haenel? 2 damage comes across. Shamir descends on down to 38, and another gold token is generated for Justin. I tend to think that, yes, it is just going to be a 0-cost blue card resolved, which makes this chum free, thanks to the fact that the blue card resolved is Give No Quarter. And Whaler Humperdinck also potentially making an appearance here because Justin Haenel has 1 more blue in hand.
Masters here, eating that one resource.
That would be a very aggressive use, but we spoke about how if you deploy Whaler Humperdinck early, it can be a bit awkward because your opponent can just take how much damage they need and clear that off the board. That equation changes when you have a chum-friendly first mate backing up the Whaler Humperdinck. Now it's a lot more difficult for Shamir to clear the Whaler Humperdinck through the chum as well. So it's a bit of a big ask for Shamir on his side. However, fortunate for him, only 4 damage coming in via the chum. So if he has a hand that can clear chum and Whaler Humperdinck, I think he would be actually very happy that he got the Mage Master boots and the Whaler Humperdinck off of Justin Haenel's side of the field.
The tide of the meta has definitely been washing Give No Quarter away from meta contending Gravy Bones decks. Nevertheless, Justin showing exactly how potent it can be, especially when the only 2 bony boys that you have in your graveyard are Chum and Whaler Humperdinck.
So Shamir elected not to block with Mask of Deceit over there. Then again, it was a chum attack, so Mask of Deceit wouldn't have worked anyway because there's no defense. It's not an attacking hero. So he's sort of forced to stay in Tarantula. You have to wonder whether he would maybe prefer to be in Redback, because if you are attacking an ally, well, the ally isn't marked. So it's you don't really get a whole bunch of your on-mark effects. Especially you don't get the go again of the Killer Star, for example, because you're not attacking a marked target. And this Orb Weaver Spinneret that he has just deployed does confer a priority window to Justin Haenel's side to perhaps go ahead and activate the chum and make Shamir's life really, really awkward.
Justin is not snap activating chum, which might bode well for Shamir. Definitely doesn't want to be letting all of the value of Arachne Tarantula go by the wayside, which would mean that faces the plays, but you just have to answer this board. Whaler Humperdinck plus Chum is something that you can grind you into dust and send you back down to the briny depths.
Yeah, you can't let your opponent untap with Whaler Humperdinck. I think Justin's saying, show me something else. Because, yeah, like he's saying, show me something else. Show me like maybe another front pump before I activate Chum. Or perhaps you just didn't find the ally for it.
Okay, and the target is Whaler for this Graphene Callistra. 4 go again. Doesn't look like there's any response from Justin Haenel. Stains of the Redback is going to cleanly remove that Whaler Humperdinck. No activation of Chum. If Justin was holding back an ally in hand, he is feeling a little bit remiss for doing so.
So it's very fortunate for Shamir that he found the Stains of the Redback in his hand, because that Callistra did not have go again because it was attacking Whaler Humperdinck, which is not a marked target. So it was actually just coming in for 4. He needed the Stains to give it go again over here. So very, very fortunate for him. They managed to find that in this hand.
Fyendal Spring Tunic counter cashed in order to swing Hunter's Clave. This one, the chosen target, is Gravy Bones. It is Justin's face. Face is the place, which means that the mark will remain if it connects. If it doesn't, mark will still remain, and Shamir still has 2 cards in hand, perhaps hoping to do a little bit of disruption and a foot forward in the life total race.
And you have to wonder whether maybe Justin wants to activate the Chum at this point. Because I believe Shamir has no resources floating, and it could be a little bit difficult for him to actually mount 6 damage onto the Chum if you activate it right here. Which basically tells Shamir you have to maybe discard one of those cards to your Tarantula and just deal a bit of vanilla damage to me. And I get to go into my turn with the Chum still lying around.
Justin lining up a block of a back alley break line here, despite the fact that there isn't really an on-hit on this Hunter's Clave, unless, of course, Shamir wants to use the Tarantula Toxin on it. But based on his skill as a player, it seems like... Oh, I guess the on-hit is 1 life lost.
Persuasive Prognosis targeting you.
Looks like. Yep, so Shamir could have activated the Arachne Tarantula over there to get over Justin Haenel's blocks. Decided not to, instead following up with Persuasive Prognosis over here, leaving 1 card behind.
1 is the current offer in terms of damage, but the on-hit, much more scary. Justin will have to banish the top card of his deck. Looks like it has been accepted.
The interesting thing about this interaction is that Justin knew the top card of his deck because of Compass of the Sunken Depths. So you know the color of the top card of your deck, so you know exactly the options your opponent has to disrupt you, if any. Looks like the top card was a blue, so he did just say, fine, you can have it. I maybe just need 1 of my blues in this hand to do something with it. But that is a funny interaction that goes on between Persuasive Prognosis and these decks like Gravy Bones, which can know the top card of the deck. The other one would be like something like Dash IO.
And honestly, this is probably the hand that Justin wants to get hit by a Persuasive Prognosis on, because Blood in the Water is going to be safe. He's got 2 redundant blues, and honestly, not a great way to use either of them. He's pretty much just going to be swinging with a Chum. His arsenal is already protected, so I can't imagine that he's really going to want to start popping those gold tokens, maybe save them for a later turn when he wants to delve a lot deeper and go much wider. In this case, I could see a world where Justin just holds on to the blue in hand and arsenals the Blood in the Water.
Also, very fortunate for Shamir over there that there was no ally on Justin Haenel's hand on that side. So that's what allowed him to clear the Humperdinck very, very cleanly.
Justin going for the blind gravy activation here. 1 gold used down to 1. He's got 3 cards in hand, but one of them must be discarded. He's really hoping it was an ally, but alas, no. Portside Exchange, perhaps the one that we saw off the Persuasive Prognosis, makes its way into the graveyard. Exactly why popping gold on this turn was a little bit risky, but Justin had nothing to gain but more allies in the bin, so probably a calculated risk there. Chum swinging in for 4 at the cost of just tapping that piratey ally.
Could have used as a fast E over here. The go again wouldn't have mattered, but it would confer an extra on hit of gold on this Chum friendly first mate. But of course, that is, you are using a whole card from your deck just to put an on hit of gold on your Chum. And if you're worried at all about potentially being fatigued, especially since your Whaler Humperdinck has now been killed, and typically you're probably only running one of those, perhaps that's why Justin's just choosing to hold onto the card and not just waste it frivolously.
Justin Haenel not really coming out ahead on that turn cycle, but remaining with a Chum on the board, which is a very scary proposition for all opponents, not just Arachne Marionette, but especially them, because it is just so difficult for those daggers to remove Chum cleanly. Hunter's Clave going to get knocked aside by a Golden Tipple as Shamir plans the rest of this turn.
I like this block from Justin Haenel's side. Often, especially when your opponent is just on one Hunter's Clave, which Arachne Marionette often is, not letting them have the mark from the Hunter's Clave that they swing can make things very, very awkward for them. They might sometimes be forced into flicking that Hunter's Clave, which then puts them down to 0 claves, and that could leave them in a very, very awkward position where they just don't draw hands that do very well without a source of mark. So I do like the respect of the Hunter's Clave mark there.
Continued respect here. Gold-baited hook and another Golden Tipple block out this Kiss of Death, which is just sitting at 3. Perhaps a little bit insulated is Justin from a Tarantula Toxin or a yellow shred that comes out of the arsenal of Shamir Sami. Golden Tipple being shredded here, and Blood in the Water comes out of the arsenal, which Shamir knew about, and shores up that Kiss of Death on hit.
And I think Justin's saying, hey, if you're not going to deal with this Chum, I'm just going to keep blocking you out and just send forward. You have a free hammer, effectively, turn after turn after turn. So, all right, dude, if you're not going to deal with my Chum, it's just going to come at you and deal 4 and just continuously be there.
Shamir perhaps unable to do so with efficient numbers. Pockets a card in Arsenal, though, still has a significant life lead. 28 plays 35. We're on the side of Gravy Bones here, who is tipping the barkeep and generating a Gold Kiss Rum token, which could unlock some really nasty future turns. For now, it's just going to be a swing of Chum. Friendly first mate again.
Also, I have to say, a little bit unfortunate for Justin over here. His sequence of draws haven't led to many allies in the graveyard so far. We've only seen a Chum, a Rigor Mortis, and a Whaler Humperdinck. And I'm not sure how many turns we are in, but I mean, both graveyards are looking, fairly thick. So the fact that he hasn't seen too many allies, that is, again, one of the fail states that Gravy can sometimes end up in. We just don't see the allies. So we're seeing him block out and be very disciplined with that. At the same time, it could just be that he's just not drawing the allies, so he's just forced into that sort of play pattern and just rely on this Chum to be the one sending the damage turn after turn.
And you think it's bad when you don't draw allies early. You're absolutely right, but it's even worse late game when you're drawing nothing but allies, when you want to just send all of the gold that you've built in your coffers all game and go resource positive, sending Conqueror of the High Seas and a bunch of other go-again attacks, or even worse, when you're needing to block for lethal damage but simply can't because none of the cards in your hand block.
And here we finally see a Chum activation. This Chum's been on the board for 3 of Shamir's turns, and it finally got activated over here. Justin Hale has found an ally, and it is yet another Chum-friendly first mate. So this ALS-like effect for Shamir is not going to be over, at least in the near future.
And Shamir, pitching a Plague Hive in order to play Command and Conquer, targeting Chum. So that scary bag of bones is not going to last. But what will last is one of the 3 tokens. Ooh, it looks like it might be Blood Rot heading Justin's way. Yes, one of those tokens from Outsiders. One of those really fearsome, infectious tokens that Azalea players absolutely love to play with. But Marionette, usually pretty lackluster in generating, except, of course, when you've got that Outsider's Fabled in your deck.
Sending a little bit of disease over to Justin Hanel's side is Shamir Sami. Bloodrot Pox, not a bad hit. I think he would have preferred Inertia the best out of all 3, but it's definitely better than Frailty. So sort of got the middle-ish effect from the pitch of the Plague Hive.
Shamir has conferred a mark on this turn, so at the end of it, he transforms into one of the Chaos Assassin demi-heroes. In this case, it's Arachne Funnel Web, offering some Arsenal disruption on the next turn cycle if he can get there and keep enough cards. But for now, passing over, 34 plays 27 on the side of Marionette, and Justin Hanel has got himself, looks like 2 cards in hand, possibly 3 and 1. Yeah, 3 cards in hand and 1 in the arsenal.
Yeah, I think he just used 1 card to discard to Chum on his turn, so quite a few options over here. Does have a Bloodrot Pox on him as well. And with the opponent being Funnel Web, you really want to try and sequence your turns such that you end without an arsenal, so you don't need to deal with that on hit at all. And for that reason, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Shamir choose to block with the Mask of Deceit on this turn cycle. Funnel Web, not a very great agent of chaos, especially because your opponent knows it's there, so they will try and not end with an arsenal, and then your Funnel Web isn't doing anything.
We've been trying to reach you regarding your body's extended warranty, says Justin Hanel. It's on the mat for all to see. Trying to capture the Chaos Assassin as part of his undead Celti crew, if he can, by the end of this game, and this is part of the way he's going to be able to get it done. Murderous Rabble is the start to what is probably going to be a pretty fearsome turn. 3 go again after revealing a blue on top.
And this is going to be the blue that goes to the yard for the Grippy Bones hero ability, so we'll have access to the Chum, and I believe the Sawbones is the other ally over there. But well, the Mage Master boots, and with the Grippy hero already being tapped, which means the rum cannot be used, unlikely to be able to get both those allies out, because Chum and Sawbones is another very fearsome combination. Looks like it's just going to be Chum on this turn. And is that a pitch of 2 allies there, Bryce?
It is indeed. Yeah, we've got a Swabby and then perhaps a Moray LaFay. I can't quite make out the ally on the bottom there.
So that was a 3 ally in hand turn for Justin Hanel over there. 1 that he discarded to the Chum and 2 that he was holding on to. And you called it, Bryce. You said when you don't see your allies early and you see them later all clumped together, it is so incredibly awkward. That's exactly what happened to Justin Hanel right there.
Yeah, it hurts Gravy to have too many allies in hand and also to have not enough. He likes his boys, but not in too big of crowds. He really is more of like a kickback guy, not a full on rager kind of guy.
The Persuasive Prognosis coming up from Shamir over here. Opponent is marked, but since he is Funnel Web and not Arachne Marionette, this is just going to be 1. And currently, ostensibly, no way to give it go again. Of course, Stains of the Redback could be something that he has access to, as well as a Black Tech Whisperers, should this Persuasive Prognosis hit.
Saints of the Redback is one of those cards that makes so much more of an impact in Arachne Marionette than, say, Arachne Slip Through the Cracks. When you have Go Again printed on the majority of the stealth cards you resolve, it just isn't as necessary of an attack reaction. Marionette, however, sometimes that is the get out of jail free card, which we saw resolved earlier this game already by Shamir.
I will activate Funnel Web's ability.
Let's see whether he has some sort of pump over here. Opponent only put a block 2, and he is Funnel Web, so it was on board +3 react already, which both players knew about. So for now, Shamir putting this up to 5, conferring 2 on hits. 1 is a Funnel Web and the other is a Persuasive Prognosis. Compass of the Sunken Depths has been activated on Justin Hanel's side, so he knows the color of the top card of the deck. So he knows potentially how disruptive they could this Persuasive Prognosis could even be.
Shamir just explaining to Justin and making sure that both players understand exactly how priority windows are going to work. Shamir just saying, once I have passed on attack reactions, then if Justin then decides he has no defense reactions, then everything will resolve. Shamir does not get yet another priority window in order to employ more attack reactions.
But if you choose not to do another reaction after this resolves, I do have a chance for
Absolutely. So if Justin just passes over here, Shamir could be left with one card left behind in hand. Will be forced to IP that card, but he seems to be making the call over here that he's okay making that decision. If he's able to get 2 cards from the opponent, it looks like now he will go ahead and deploy the Justinic.
An excellent choice because Justinic is a card that hurts a lot. Blood in the Water, however, Justin Hainel gesturing like he's going to discard. Yes, a card with Watery Grave, and it's a big one. Another Sawbones Dockhand makes its way into the graveyard in order to pay the additional cost of Blood in the Water and thereby block 6. Currently, it's a total of 8 block on this massive Persuasive Prognosis for 4 + 5, 9, so still leaking in on 1.
So he really was hoping the Call to the Grave was a 3 block instead. But having a defense reaction in Arsenal is yet another reason why Funnel Web is one of the weaker Agents of Chaos. Your opponent can either go off in Arsenal or just put a defense reaction in their Arsenal, and then your Funnel Web on hit doesn't really do much.
Loot the Arsenal is the banish off the top, which is a blue. Shamir really smartly sequencing it so that Justinic triggers first, which also banishes a card, but in this case getting totally punished. If he layered Persuasive Prognosis first, yes, he would have allowed Justin to know what was going to be banished and thereby give him the agency to kind of get around the Persuasive Prognosis trigger. But Justin playing a little bit of mind games, I guess, with that compass, saying, I don't care if you banish the top card of the deck. So Shamir digs 1 deeper, finds an ally instead, and is thus unable to banish any cards from the hand of Justin.
I absolutely feel for Shamir in that spot. So many times as new, I've gone Persuasive Nick, order the Nick first, and then the Nick hits the relevant color, and the Persuasive hits that one playset of yellows that they have in the deck, and then you completely miss. Of course, in this case, Gravy does have more yellows, could have had something in hand there, but unfortunate for him over here, missing on Persuasive Prognosis. That never feels good, especially when you're in a matchup where you're already behind. Just the way the matchup goes, and your opponent has a chum-friendly first mate still on the field.
It's such a bummer for Shamir because I think, like any way you slice it, if you see a Gravy Bones activate Compass when you're sending a Persuasive Prognosis and accept the damage, you've got to order the triggers that way. I mean, he did it right.
For sure. And Chum over here coming in with, is that a Loot the Hold on hit or an Avasti?
Loot the Hold. It is Loot the Hold, and then Go Again is conferred by the Rum, drinking at the beginning of the turn.
Very, very strong sequence from Justin over here. 4 Go Again with Disruption and the promise of probably the Sawbones coming out after this Chum attack, which will also be allowed to attack because Compass will get that Go Again. So it's looking to be full 10 damage coming up from Justin Hainel's side with 2 allies left behind. 2 very pesky allies for Arachne Marinette as well. Sawbones, super, super awkward for Marinette to deal with because it basically says you cannot flick knives. You cannot use your flick knives until you clear this Sawbones. So Shamir needs to find a head jab-like effect to clear the Sawbones before the flick knives will be available. But then there's also like a Chum lying around. And I have to point out Shamir's decision on the previous turn to send the Persuasive at face. He really wanted Disruption to go through because he had the Justinic to make it go up to 6 to be able to clear the Chum. So he took a bit of an aggressive stance over there and kind of got punished for it because he didn't get the Disruption that he wanted and didn't clear the Chum.
A second Give No Quarter resolved by Justin Hainel here, and the result is 2 Sawbones Dockhands to accompany this Chum-friendly first mate. Give No Quarter is looking pretty darn good in this particular build that Justin Hainel has brought to this game. 32 plays 24. It's back over to Shamir, who has faced no extra disruption, but that Loot the Hold bought 2 Savor Bloodsheds out of hand, and that probably means that Shamir doesn't have a whole lot of other offensive capability on this turn.
So you know how I said Justin could resolve a Sawbones and attack with it? This is so much more scary for Shamir because normally his out against Sawbones is to send a head jab at it. And when I say head jab, I mean this is 0 for 3 Go Again, like the form of Hurl or in the form of Pain in the Backside. However, with double Sawbones on the field, 1-0 for 3 will not actually clear the Sawbones. You still need to put something else into it as well, which is so incredibly awkward for the assassin that's already starved on trying to send these sort of Xaxes attack numbers.
Oh, and Justin perhaps also soul reading his opponent, Shamir. All he can do on this turn is pitch a Command and Conquer for Graphene Calycera and resolve a Tarantula Toxin in order to remove one of those Sawbones, which means that he had 4 reds in hand, 2 Saber Bloodsheds, a Tarantula Toxin, and a CNC. That is one of the worst hands I think Marionette could possibly pull up.
So that normally would have been fine because you could go Saber, Tunic, Calycera, and then commit to flicking the Clave so that your opponent gets marked, and then when it hits, not only will you draw cards from the Saber, your Arachne Marionette ability will also give the Calycera a go again, and you have the T-Tox to back it up as well. So actually, that was a very strong hand against anything but Sawbones. Sawbones was the card that basically stuffed that entire plan for Shamir because that flick of the Hunter's Clave would not have gone through, opponent would not have been marked, you wouldn't get the draw from the Saver, you wouldn't get go again from Arachne Marionette, so he was forced to block with the Saver on the Chum because it was face up that Justin was going to resolve the Sawbones following the Chum attack. So heads up read from Shamir knowing the Sawbones was coming so that he couldn't go for the aggressive line. But yeah, so then he was forced to just pitch a red and clear the Sawbones in a very inefficient manner. And this is a sort of snowball-y type effect that Gravy Bones can put his opponents into.
Early variants not really going Justin Haenel's way, but in this case, not only is his deck starting to cooperate, but Shamir's is also starting to cooperate for the Gravy Bones game plan. This is his power, turning all of your vices against you as he transforms you into a zombie walker that to do his bidding.
Activate hook, closing chain.
Hook activation here, closing the combat chain after a Golden Tipple and Murderous Rabble have been resolved. And heck, why not send Sawbones swinging as well? 6, turn your blood into gold is the on-hit right here.
So I believe once again the Tipple did not discard an ally, so a little bit fortunate for Shamir over here that Justin Haenel's board isn't getting even more out of control. Because one Sawbones and Chum arguably is already quite out of control, but given that no further allies were established on that turn, Shamir getting a little bit of a break there, while Justin is still sitting on 0 gold. So while Shamir's on the back foot over here, it's definitely not over for him over yet, given the opponent is sitting on 0 gold and no allies in grave.
And not only did Justin not discard an ally, he didn't discard any yellow card on that Golden Tipple, which meant that his gold-baited hook was not risk-free. So Shamir blocking out with 2 cards on that Sawbones and preventing gold generation means that Justin has lost that all too valuable arm piece for the rest of the game. And without any gold on the board at the moment, this could be the moment that the gravy train kind of pulls to a halt.
That definitely was a very risky hook activation from Justin Haenel's side, especially if you have if there's even some chance that this game goes long, you really need to be able to continuously generate gold from that hook activation. Let's see whether that pays off for him. He did buy a lot of tempo. Question is, can he actually convert that? And starting off with a chart the high seas that misses on the blue, not exactly where you want to be.
And what a miss it was, Ponkish. It's Conqueror of the High Seas, the second copy thus far that goes into the graveyard. Speaking of if this game goes long, you really need to be resolving those Conqueror of the High Seas. You only get 3, and even that is going to be difficult to shut the door on someone that seems so stalwart on defense like Shamir Sami. For now, Chum-friendly First Mate comes in for go again as an Avast G has been resolved by Justin earlier on this turn. The life totals are getting closer. 24 plays 26 after Shamir accepts that damage and generates another gold for Justin.
Justin, now this is a sort of spots where it feels like you have so many options on the Gravy Bones side. You could pitch into gold, you could activate Gravy Bones' hero ability to try and to use a gold and get access to a top cover deck that way instead. Kind of the world is his oyster over here. Despite only having 3 cards, it's a lot of virtual card advantage in the form of those gold pieces.
Call to the grave, which means that the world is now his oyster, potentially. We'll have to see what he chooses, though. Whaler Humperdinck is gone. The third copy of Chum Friendly, the friendly first main, is there. Sawbones, the last copy, has already hit the bin. Plenty of Rigamortes in order to fetch if Justin so chooses.
And here's where Justin wants to try and establish the run. We spoke a bit earlier about that aggressive early use of the Mage Master Boots to establish a Chum and a Whaler Humperdinck. While very strong, exactly what we said might happen did happen, where Shamir took some damage, cleared the Humperdinck, and now you no longer have that safety valve for this fatigue strategy. And looking at the deck size, Bryce, it's getting quite thin. He needs to try and figure out a way to actually leverage the tempo that he has, get some action points and attack with allies, and attack with multiple allies on the same turn, if he doesn't want to risk getting fatigued. That being said, Shamir's side of the field, that deck size is also pretty thin. And if you are stuck blocking a bunch of allies again and again, maybe you run out of cards as well. So we've suddenly got a very tight game on our hands here.
Flesh and Blood does require this kind of sixth sense, especially if you're playing a deck like Gravy Bones that just churns through the entire deck and doesn't have a consistent damage potential thing on the board, like a weapon, like a Titan's Fist or something like that. You need to know the point where fatigue is on offer for the game that you're playing. I mean, I think back to the days where I was piloting Lexi against Oldham, for instance. Sitting down in the seat, I know I have to get every possible point of value out of every one of the arrows in my deck in order to go the distance. The question, though, for Gravy Bones is, am I running over my opponent, or am I in a situation where I'm going to get ground out? Shamir knows long before Justin because he's the one making those choices. Can Justin sniff it out and pivot in time is the real question.
That was such a sick sequence from Justin Hainel over there. He went blue lead the charge into give no quarter, which let him play the Sawbones for free, but because it's still a 2-cost, lead the charge sees it and gives him the action point for it, and then activates Death Threats to play the Chum with the extra action point and then attack with the Chum as well. So now he has 2 Chums on the field and a Sawbones Dockhand. This is a very scary board state for Shamir to deal with.
Shamir has been killing zombies left and right, doing a little bit of Left 4 Dead cosplay from back in the day. Up 6 and run is going to be the way to start here. 22 plays 24. Shamir is now for the first time behind on life, but he's kept so many cards in hand. I think he is smelling his way into the destruction of some of these fearsome zombie allies.
This Chum activation, though, is going to have something to say about that. Will Shamir be able to kill the Chum and send something relevant to Justin Hainel's face? And we have to remember there is yet another Chum on the field as well. Justin Hainel has just activated one of them right now. Should Shamir represent that he's able to kill this first Chum, Justin could, if he has an ally in his hand, just activate the other one as well and just say, I'm not dealing with any of his shenanigans this turn.
It's 5 go again here at Chum because he must. Scar Tissue gets way over the top, which seems extremely overkill, and it is, but of course we do have to remember the 1 potential damage prevention floating from Sawbones at any point at Justin's discretion. Right now it's Graphene Calycera as the follow-up. I think that the target was Sawbones. Yes, indeed, and Tarantula Toxin is going to clear it up. So Shamir, saying it like it is, he's on cleanup duty, doing everything he can to keep the board at bay on Justin's side.
And that was a fairly efficient way to clear those pesky allies. Once again, Justin Hainel's it feels like almost now the question is on him. Can you actually convert? Can you actually use the tempo that you've been given because your opponent is clearing these allies? Now that you have lost your Mage Master Boots, you've already used your Rum. Can you actually get over this 22 points of life with the remaining deck that you have and the remaining allies that are in there? Which, very importantly, does not include a Whaler Humperdinck anymore.
No, it's going to have to be mini whalers coming at Shamir to get the job done. I'm, of course, talking about the Philosopher Carpenter, Swabby, who can swing for a significant amount of damage in his own right. Don't knock him out until he's come knocking at your door a couple times. Conqueror of the High Seas, though, is currently the thing that's coming knocking at Shamir, and it does, I think that's a Rigor Mortis that is accompanying Swabby in the bin, which means that those 2 resources could be resolved in order to get him out and swinging. But have we seen a blue hit the graveyard, Punkish?
I don't think so. I believe this turn was activate Gravy Bones to put the Rigor Mortis in the yard from the top and then come in with a Conqueror over here. So it doesn't look like an ally would be established on this turn. But Conqueror of the High Seas, yet another way for Justin Hainel to beat fatigue. It is just a big attack that forces your opponent to put 3 cards in front of it to stop the on-hit, which means you sort of go quite a bit ahead in terms of card equity because your 1 card from deck is trading for 3 cards of theirs.
Shamir, considering perhaps exactly the point from my co-caster, can I afford to be throwing 3 of these cards from hand in front of that ghostly boat, especially when friendly first mate still remains on the board. Justin does have access to 2 resources in the pitch, could go fishing with the last gold token that he has at his disposal, but it begs the question, what can you draw of any value off of that? If he were to get a blue that he can play, for instance, he would simply have to play it out and then have only dead threads as a source of resources for the rest of the turn. So you could potentially resolve the rigor mortis. I tend to think that is not going to be the most efficient thing. So maybe just an activation of the gold token in order to reestablish the arsenal.
Mask of Deceit coming out here from Shamir's side to cover up the 8 power from Conqueror of the High Seas, but Justin Haenel is not marked, so this is a random roll of an Agent of Chaos. Looks like it's going to be Orb Weaver Spinneret for Shamir.
Arachne Orb Weaver coming out of the tokens. Shamir racking his brain. What's the name of that one? What's number 3? Yep, it is Arachne Orb Weaver. Probably not ideal here, but I think Shamir is just happy to be cashing in his helmet for the equipment block rather than any upside that he might get from the on defensibility.
It does let him swing the Callistra for free, which sometimes can be relevant, but given that he already blocked with a Save of Bloodshed, I mean, he had to make the block before he knew what he'd be turning into, right? So, yeah, so I had to make the block, and then maybe now perhaps regretting that, given that he's all Weaver Spinneret. Maybe would have liked a free Callistra swing if he has a Save of Bloodshed to back it up. But for now, does need to deal with the charm and did not escape that turn cycle unscathed. He did take quite a bit of damage, and now the life lead is on Justin Haenel's side, while he still has his charm-friendly first mate on the board.
18 plays 24. Shamir, even though he has been so diligent about removing zombies this way and that, still succumbing to the overall power level of Gravy Bones, Shipwrecked Looter, despite being one of the newest heroes to crash in on the scene of Flesh and Blood. That being said, the Dreadnoughts are no longer plentiful in the deck. Justin has resolved the last copy of Conqueror of the High Seas, and in kind, Shamir resolving his last copy of Up Sticks and Run as the first action on this turn.
Activate.
And looks like a chum will be activated in response to Up Sticks and Run. So now Shamir is forced to attack the chum. It's a very interesting fork over here on the Gravy Bones side, because typically your opponent kind of needs to clear the chum anyway to be able to win the game. So oftentimes you might just want to hold on to the ally and save it for, like, say, a Golden Tipple or a Portside Exchange, because the opponent's going to clear the chum anyway. So you discarding it didn't actually do anything. But of course, Justin perhaps saying, I don't want to deal with anything. We don't know the contents of his hand. If it's good enough, maybe you're just saying, I don't want to deal with anything that you might do. You're probably going to use your last action point to clear the chum. I don't have to deal with the Codex afterwards or anything like that. So go ahead and attack the chum and let me do my thing. And looks like the thing is going to be pretty strong.
Yeah, the start here is a Vast G, which goes into the graveyard, allows Justin to access all of his decomposing dudes in the graveyard, and the one he reaches for is, of course, the Philosopher Carpenter, Swabby, coming in now for 7 go again, gold token on hit. Justin still has 1 resource remaining in the pitch zone. And a curious thing here, Ponkish, because the Anka made its way into the graveyard on Shamir's turn, Justin now doesn't have access to dead threads on his own turn, which means that he could have... Oh, never mind. He would have needed another action point anyway. So he's probably just going to be happy to resolve Rigor Mortis or Anka and pass turn.
Resolving Rigor Mortis, like when you resolve an ally and you don't attack with it, that's actually quite risky, because now, especially a 1-health ally like Rigor Mortis, now Shamir can just clear it with a Hunter's Clave and then send another attack at Swabby, and then you basically lost an entire ally without getting the offensive output from it, which is exactly the sort of situation that could end you up in fatigue. So we're going to have to see whether that Rigor Mortis deployment over there was perhaps a little bit too aggressive from Justin Haenel's side.
So yeah, exactly what I was talking about. So let's live in a world where Justin had not activated Chum, because, as you said, Shamir pretty much needs to remove it anyway because it's a liability for his game plan. Instead, on Justin's turn, he could have activated Gravy Bones in order to get Anka into the graveyard and thereby unlock dead threads for the end of that turn, thereby allowing him to establish Anka at the end of the turn rather than Rigor Mortis, which is a card that is way more insulated from, what Shamir just did, which is pitch 2 reds and swing a Hunter's Glaive.
Absolutely. And I didn't bring this up the first time you said it, but why is Swabby a philosopher carpenter?
If you're not in the know, then you just don't know, Ponkish, and that's all I can say about
Wow. I guess I'm not cool enough. I'm not part of the club that understands this inside joke. All right.
that. No, for some reason, Ponkish, I got it in my head that I just think that Swabby gets a bad rap about being dumb and swinging a hammer all the time. I think that Swabby often asks himself the question, Swabby hit, but what is Swabby? Who is Swabby? You know, it's something that makes me more comfortable at night when I'm getting my doors knocked down by him coming in for 7 with gold on hit.
You know, I didn't even notice that he has a hammer. Does he have a hammer in the heart? In his art, I didn't even know that. But thank you. That is now my headcanon as well, and I will be thinking about that every time I see a Swabby get to
Side note, he is a philosopher, but he's also a nihilist. But he's a gentle one.
2 allies. Up to 3 gold.
As Ponkish pontificates on what this means for the broader world of Wraith, Justin Haenel resolves his second chart the high seas of the game. This time, it is a hit on both cards, probably not exactly how he wants it. It's 2 allies that go into the bin, fixing his gold issues, but not his resource issues. Tipping the barkeep now is Justin Haenel, thereby putting a second blue into the graveyard and generating a little bit of alcohol, which might carry him through the end of this game. 24 plays 17, though. Shamir still holding strong.
I will give you a
Justin Haenel definitely needs some sort of offensive overlap to get over this potentially fatiguey end state that he finds himself in, especially with the number of cards remaining in his deck. Oh my god. Oh my god, this is the first time I've ever seen that happen, Bryce. He gave the gold from Tip the Barkeep. He gave a gold over to Shamir to put the Tip the Barkeep back to the bottom of his deck. I've never seen this play actually happen in real life, but that is
Literally never. Literally never. So both players now have themselves a drink or I don't know, I guess like a proverbial drink on Shamir's side of the board.
loot the arsenal.
Definitely got tipped
Activate
from that blue card. Loot the arsenal into a consumption of the rum that Justin just established on the board. So Justin is coming for the arsenal and also probably going again on this next Swabby attack.
does not eat.
activating dead threads as well because multiple allies have hit the bin on this turn thanks to Shout to High Seas. Swabby coming in for 7. Go again from the rum. On hit, Shamir loses his arsenal. And
Non-floating.
Arachne Marionette not really known for having really good armor, so the 7 power actually could be quite awkward for him unless he has a defense reaction, but I don't think we haven't seen any yet, I believe, and it didn't look like he came into this matchup with the intention to fatigue. He just finds himself in this spot right now. So I'd be surprised to see a defense reaction. So he might need to give up a whole extra card or lose the arsenal or give up the tunic or the flick knives, which are very, very tough asks.
To take the arsenal or not to take the arsenal? That is the question facing Swabby. And more importantly, Shamir Sami, who blocks out 8 on that attack for 7, thereby protecting the arsenal. Swabby left to wonder further about the meaning of life as Anka joins the fray and swings in for 5. Why not? This is a big bad turn, exactly what Justin needs, especially when he is probably, I mean, give me your eyes here, Ponkish. Sub 15 cards in deck?
I think so. I think it's around that number. It's at this point of the game where he needs to rely on 2 things. Gold Kiss Rum to get action points, or back alley Breakline. We haven't, I don't believe we've seen him resolve any Saltwater Swells, so it would have to be off the back of a Call to the Grave or a Chart the High Seas to get the back alley Breakline into either the Arsenal or the Graveyard to confer him the extra action point. Because turns like that is what actually lets him end up leaking damage into Shamir Sami. That was the first time in a few turns we've seen him leak a significant amount of damage into Shamir, and that was off the back of a Gold Kiss Rum. He needs more of those kind of turns should he want to not get fatigue in this game.
All Shamir is able to do is remove Swabby on Justin's side of the board, and just as quick, Justin puts another Swabby back into the bin. And I do think, oh, never mind, he's resolved a couple Call to the Graves. I was thinking we were back at pitch stack because he pitched a Swabby early on, but this deck has been shuffled plenty of times.
Call to the Grave right now, what is the ask? He has the allies that he needs in the yard already. Does he have a back alley Breakline remaining, or did he block with them, Bryce?
He definitely blocked with one. It begs the question, how many is he running in the deck? In this case, wow, it's a blue golden tipple found on Call to the Grave. I think Justin thought he still had allies left in there, or perhaps that back alley break line, but it seems like it was just the one copy. Unfortunately, not able to find that get out of jail free card.
So does still have that Tip the Barkeep that he put back there by giving Shamir a gold, and that's, I think, maybe his last source of an extra action point. And I think when he spread the deck out just now, I think he's only somewhere between like 5 to 7 cards remaining there. So he is very, very close to just getting fully fatigued here.
Okay, so there are only 2 allies in the bin and 2 on the board, but Justin Hanel just pitched 2 right there. 1 more copy of Enka and 1 more copy of Swabi. So there are still pirate allies to use as weapons, essentially, for the remainder of the game. The question, though, is he able to keep enough cards in deck to play blues and get them out of the yard, and also to get them there in the first place before Shamir can get rid of the board that he has to now and start pivoting and going on the offensive?
Loot the hold, backing up the Swabi hit, it looks like, and Shamir going to respect that on-hit discard a card by giving up the Flick Knives, it looks like, which, at this point, if your game plan is to fatigue your opponent, you don't need Flick Knives anymore. Flick Knives is there to help you kill your opponent, either by putting a mark on them when they're not expecting it, or to flick Kisses of Death, but Shamir's recognizing, oh, you have, like, what, less than 10 cards left in your deck? Cool, I'm just going to fatigue you. I don't need this offensive output that Flick Knives provides me.
And this is one of the powers of being a good pilot in Shamir's seat. You know, you can pivot to a fatigued game plan later on in the game. I definitely don't think the way that Shamir was playing early on, he was planning on fatiguing out Justin early on in the game. He just had a couple bad draw sequences. There was double chum with, and then there was a chum and double sawbones earlier on in the game, which then kind of forces Shamir to pivot to going long.
And that is the sort of state you can potentially find yourself in if you respect the assassin a bit too much. We saw Justin block out Hunter's Claves. We saw him block quite a few things from Shamir's side, and then suddenly, before you know it, you're actually not able to overcome the fatigue because of how much you respected the opponent's mark effects, the opponent's disruptive effects.
Shamir giving a cheeky laugh as Justin resolves a portside exchange, discarding Eye of Ophidia, and all of a sudden the cards are flooding out of the Gravy Bones deck. There is nothing left there, and we finally see the little phrase that was underneath it all from the beginning of the game. The deck is the poop deck. And of course, next to the pitch zone, which is the doubloon zone, tipping the barkeep is Justin Hanel. Will he give another gold token to Shamir? He does indeed, which means that Tip the barkeep stays in the deck, insulating him a little bit from fatigue, but there's only 1 card left here. He's going to have to resolve as many allies out of the grave as possible, but I don't think we're going to see all of them come out to play before this is just lights out.
And even if we do see them come out to play, there just won't be enough damage on 1 turn cycle for Shamir to not be able to just block them as efficiently as he wants and then clear them off the board and just tell Justin, hey, you don't have a weapon. You just straight don't have a weapon. All you have is a compass and no more allies to speak of, so you're just deterministically fatigued because I have daggers.
And I do wonder about this. I mean, now that I'm seeing it in action, I do think that Tip the Barkeep is one of those things that can kind of keep you safe for a very long time on the gravy side of things, just to resolve these allies one by one and chip as much damage as humanly possible. I don't think it would save him here, but it does make me think back to that decision to risk it all with the gold baited hook earlier on, thus making it so that gold generation is so much harder later on in the game.
Speaking of risks taken early on in the game, I also want to point back all the way to, I think it was like turn 2 or 3, which was the activation of the Mage Master Boots to put out a Chum and a Whaler Humperdinck. We spoke about it then, where once a Humperdinck is off the field, if you're only running 1, you suddenly don't have that get out of jail free card anymore to get out of a fatigue endgame. Whereas now, if you imagine a Whaler Humperdinck was available over here, you could put Shamir in a blocking pattern where they can't hold enough cards to clear the Humperdinck because their life total is being threatened that much. And so, yeah, that's just yet another early decision that's perhaps haunting Justin Haenel in this endgame state.
Shamir doing something he probably has never done piloting Arachne Marionette. Draw a card off of gold, pitching a blue. Bonds of Agony in the pitch zone. Shamir has traded that for another card from the deck. Gonna see if he can keep removing these allies, because honestly, that is all he's got to do. The second gold goes bye-bye as well. Shamir has gone 2 resources positive on this turn thus far, and we are just waiting to see what he decides to deploy here.
It's funny because you're drawing into an Anka, which typically you don't really want to draw into, but you know your opponent's holding 2 blues and no allies, so Shamir is fully safe to make those sort of plays.
The end game of Marionette versus Gravy Bones is zany to say the least. Orb Weaver, Spinneret Resolve there. Hunter's Clave sent at Gravy Bones. 1 damage conferred there, and Justin is now marked. Graphene Callistra comes in for 4 and clears up. I believe that was Anka. He had 2 Ankas on the board, right?
Yes.
Okay.
2 Ankas on the board. So one of them cleared by the Callistra for 4. Roll off the Arachne Hero ability going to happen. Going to turn into Arachne Redback. Going to help him clear double allies if Justin Haenel manages to resolve that on this turn. But while Shamir's deck is still looking quite thin, looks like he has just enough gas to potentially clear these allies that Justin Haenel's going to be presenting.
And once the allies are gone, it's deterministically over. If these players were to play it out, it would sure take a while, but all Shamir has to do is swing a dagger every single turn, and it is all over for Justin Haenel.
I don't mind you
And that Tip the Barkeep, the alternate mode where you give your opponent a gold and put it back to the bottom, has actually been looking quite impressive over here. We spoke about him having, only 2 to 3 cards remaining. But he's able to reuse one of those cards again and again, which means that's just another blue that's... Oh!
The bill comes at the end, yeah. So the issue here, Ponkish, I have been equally impressed for quite some time because you can kind of just keep using Tip the Barkeep to get more allies out, more action points, etc. If you keep doing that to the point where you don't have any other blues you can put in the graveyard, you can no longer pass a gold to your opponent because Tip the Barkeep goes to the bottom of the deck instead of the graveyard, thereby no longer unlocking the Watery Grave.
Exactly. Gravy Bones' ability says he needs to see a blue card hit the graveyard, not see you play a blue card. So Tip the Barkeep, if you use it for the alternate mode, it means you can't play your allies. So Justin Haenel over there actually rewound back and said, okay, I'm not going to give you the gold actually because I need this to go to the yard. Establishes the Rigor Mortis. I think he activated a rum for the attack, but I think he just forgot to tap the hero ability. And so he's able to do a double ally swing, but looks like that's going to be the last deployment of any allies we see from Gravy Bones' side in this game, because his last card is a Sunken Treasure. He can get rid of it with the Gravy Bones' ability to put a blue in the yard, but then he doesn't have resources to actually deploy any allies.
So Shamir, by his chinny chin with 7 life points remaining to Justin Haenel's 23, if he is able to remove both the Anka and Rigor Mortis on his opponent's side of the board, it is lights out. And I think Shamir is going to be able to get it done here, Punkish.
He actually doesn't even need to remove them because both these allies cost resources to swing. So he's actually just found a Command and Conquer here, going to clear that arsenal out from Justin Haenel. He's going to have no cards in hand, deck, arsenal, no cards there. So he can't swing these allies. They're just there. They're just there as, nice decoration, I guess, for Gravy Bones' boat.
And immediately the life totals descend to 0, as decides that this game is over. I'm sure our players agreed on it too. And that is all she wrote, ladies and gentlemen. What a fantastic display from Shamir Sami. There were definitely some certain points during that game where I had completely counted him out.
I thought the game was over when it was Chump Whaler Humperdinck, but thankfully for Shamir, there was no way for the Gravy to protect the Whaler Humperdinck. So he didn't draw an ally that hand to protect the Chump. But then I thought the game was over again once it was Chum, Sawbones. But Shamir just recognizing that his out was to fatigue, and he played to it fantastically.
So as impressive as the 3 copies of Give No Quarter were on Justin Haenel's side of the board, I do want to take a minute and mention something that was not seen in the deck, because we saw the entirety of Justin Haenel's deck, not a single copy of Saltwater Swell, which definitely can be the linchpin in the Gravy Bones game plan, and I think we were missing it here.
when you are trying to establish offensive overlaps, which you have to do because your opponent's trying to fatigue you, you really need to try and pressure them on, deal a bunch of damage on one turn, and also go wide enough, and also force them to take your, in a sense, true damage in the form of these swells and tipples, because they need to hold enough cards to clear your allies that you're establishing. So yes, I completely agree with you, Bryce. I think the lack of saltwater swells there were hurting Justin quite a bit, and was perhaps part of the reason why he ended up getting fatigued.
In general, it's got to be a combination tide of allies from the graveyard and also these seemingly innocuous head jab effects that are also generating Gravy Bones game plans over and over and over again. One of the other things we have to mention is I think there was maybe like 1-2 golden tipples that were resolved for the entirety of their effect, and one of them was discarding another yellow tipple, not even an ally.
Exactly. And I also want to point out the back alley break lines. I think there might have been 2. I think he might have blocked with 2 of them. But that's another one of those very important pieces for the end game fatigue state. Should you get there, you know, if you have them in a deck, you chart the high seas, and there's no swell, so it's really just chart the high seas. Well, and Call to the Grave as well. That can help you get that extra action point. So basically, get an on-demand rum, basically, that you need to just get a couple more double ally swings. Because to Justin's credit, despite not having those pieces and despite having a bit of an awkward early game where he didn't find those allies, he was very close to getting Shamir in the state where he'd be forced to block out allies and not be able to hold enough cards to clear them. So he just needed a couple more of those action point generators, and he absolutely could have gotten there as well. It was a very tight game, and it was fantastically played by both players.
Without a doubt, I am going to be going to bed thinking about that one for sure, as I'm sure our competitors are as well. That VOD review is going to be one heck of a good time, I think, for Shamir and Justin both. Seemed like they had a great time, too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing me on again. It's been such a pleasure to cast and just hear the players actually have a great time playing such great games of Flesh, Blood, Blood.
The pleasure has been all mine. Thank you so much, Pankaj Bhajwani, for joining the Bryce and Friends casting team for round 4 of the League That Means Nothing. We are, of course, in season 4, and we are nowhere near done, ladies and gentlemen. There is so much more flesh and blood to be had, which means that there's more Bryce and Friends. We're kicking Pankaj off the island for the next one, and we're going to see if we can get another illustrious caster in the booth with me for, of course, more League That Means Nothing. So stick around, stay tuned to the Go Again Gaming YouTube channel, and we'll be back with more Flesh and Blood in short order.